If you knew you were about to die, what would you eat? It's a question we ask ourselves idly. A parlor game. Would you choose a feast of lobster and steak? Or the simple comfort of your mother's cooking? For most of us, it's a fantasy. But for some, it is the last real choice they will ever make. This is the story of the last meal. A ritual as old as execution itself. A final act of mercy, or a hollow gesture in the face of state-sanctioned death. The requests range from the gluttonous to the bizarre, from the symbolic to the profane. A single olive, a lump of dirt, a feast for a king, refused at the last moment. These are not just meals. They are final statements. They are windows into the souls of society's most condemned men and women. What can a final meal tell us about a person, about a crime, about justice, and about ourselves? Tonight, we are not just looking at what was on the plate. We are investigating the psychology, the history, and the profound, often disturbing meaning behind the most bizarre last meals in modern history. This is a journey into the heart of a dark and fascinating ritual. This is Dark Chronicles. The tradition of the last meal is not a modern invention. Its roots run deep into the soil of human history, tangled with superstition, religion, and fear. Long before the electric chair or lethal injection, ancient societies practiced this ritual for a reason that had nothing to do with mercy. They were afraid of ghosts. In many pre-Christian cultures, it was believed that a person who was executed would return as a vengeful spirit. The last meal was a form of appeasement, a final offering to pacify the soul of the condemned, to ensure they would cross over to the afterlife without looking back. It was a transaction, food in exchange for peace for the living. With the rise of Christianity, the ritual took on a new meaning. It became a parallel to the Last Supper of Jesus Christ, a final moment of communion and grace before death. In colonial America, the Puritans would hold elaborate sermons and offer a feast to the condemned, hoping for a last-minute confession and salvation of their soul. The meal was no longer about appeasing a ghost, but about saving a sinner. Today, in the sanitized world of the modern penal system, the ritual continues, stripped of its ancient magic and religious fervor. It is now often called a special meal, a bureaucratic euphemism for a tradition steeped in blood and belief. But even in this sterile environment, the last meal retains a powerful psychological weight. For the condemned, it is the final act of control in a life that has been completely stripped of it. For the state, it is a performance of humanity, a way to soften the brutal reality of what is about to happen. It is a ritual that comforts us, the living, as much as it does the dying. This journey into the history of the last meal is just the beginning. We are about to explore the specific choices of some of history's most notorious criminals and what those choices reveal. This is more than just dark trivia. It's an investigation into human nature at its most extreme. If you want to be part of this exploration, subscribe to Dark Chronicles and ring the notification bell. The darkness holds truths we all need to see. Sometimes, the most powerful statements are the quietest. In 1963, Victor Feguer faced execution in Iowa for kidnapping and murder. He was the last person to be executed in the state before it abolished the death penalty. For his last meal, he didn't ask for a feast. He asked for a single olive with the pit still inside. After the execution, the pit was found in his pocket. His request was a symbol of hope. He reportedly told guards he hoped an olive tree, a universal symbol of peace, would grow from his grave. It was a final, silent plea for a legacy other than that of a murderer, a desperate attempt to bring life out of death. If an olive represents peace, what does dirt represent? In 1990, James Edward Smith, a murderer and practitioner of voodoo, made one of the most bizarre requests in the history of death row. He asked for a lump of dirt. Not just any dirt. He wanted it for a voodoo ritual he believed would allow his soul to leave his body and be reincarnated. The prison, citing health concerns, denied his request. They gave him a cup of yogurt instead. Smith's request was a window into a belief system far outside the mainstream. A final attempt to control his own soul's journey through a ritual the state could not comprehend. And then there is the minimalism of pure indifference. In 2001, Timothy McVeigh, the man responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing that killed 168 people, including 19 children, was executed. He showed no remorse. His final statement was a handwritten copy of the poem Invictus, and his last meal? 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. There was no symbolism, no nostalgia, no grand statement. It was the choice of a man treating his execution day like any other. The banality of the request, coming from a man who had committed such an extraordinary act of evil, is what makes it so chilling. It was a final cold dismissal of the gravity of his own death. While some choose minimalism, others choose excess. The most common last meal requests are for comfort foods: burgers, fries, fried chicken, steak. These are the tastes of childhood, of freedom, of a life that is about to be extinguished. For many, the last meal is a final retreat into nostalgia. John Wayne Gacy, the serial killer who murdered at least 33 young men and boys while moonlighting as a children's party clown, was one such case. Before his execution in 1994, he requested a bucket of KFC original recipe chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, and fresh strawberries. Before his life of monstrous crime, Gacy had managed several KFC restaurants. His last meal was a nostalgic trip back to a time before he became a monster, a final taste of a life he had destroyed. But sometimes, a feast can be a weapon. In 2011, Lawrence Russell Brewer, a white supremacist convicted for his role in the horrific dragging death of James Byrd Jr., decided to make a mockery of the tradition. He submitted an enormous request: 2 chicken fried steaks, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet, a pound of barbecue, a pizza, ice cream, and more. The prison complied. The feast was prepared and delivered to his cell. Brewer took one look at it and refused to eat a single bite, telling the guards he wasn't hungry. The act of defiance was so blatant, so disrespectful to the ritual and the prison staff, that it had immediate consequences. A furious Texas state senator declared that the privilege had been abused for the last time. Days later, Texas, the state with the busiest execution chamber in the nation, abolished the century-old tradition of customized last meals. Brewer's stunt ensured that no inmate in Texas would ever have one again. But a meal can also be a tool for redemption. In 2007, Philip Ray Workman, convicted of killing a police officer, made a unique request. He asked that his last meal, a vegetarian pizza, not be given to him. Instead, he asked that it be donated to a homeless person. The prison denied his request, but word got out. On the day of his execution, homeless shelters across Tennessee were flooded with vegetarian pizzas, donated by strangers in Workman's name. His final act of protest and charity succeeded, even though he never got to see it. He turned his last meal from an act of personal comfort into an act of public giving. These stories show how a simple meal can become a complex statement of defiance, of charity, of nostalgia. Each choice is a piece of a psychological puzzle. We are dedicated to assembling these puzzles to understand the darker side of human history. If you find this process as fascinating and important as we do, subscribe to Dark Chronicles. There are many more stories to uncover. Perhaps the most haunting last meal story is that of Ricky Ray Rector. In 1992, Rector was executed in Arkansas for the murder of a police officer. After his crime, Rector had turned the gun on himself, surviving the suicide attempt, but effectively giving himself a lobotomy. He was left with the mental capacity of a child. For his last meal, he requested steak, fried chicken, and cherry Kool-Aid. For dessert, he had a slice of pecan pie. After finishing the main course, he carefully set the slice of pie aside. When the guards came to take him to the execution chamber, he told them he was saving it for later. He did not understand that there was no later. The image of that uneaten slice of pie became a powerful symbol in the debate over capital punishment and mental competency. It took a team of 5 men over 50 minutes to find a suitable vein for the lethal injection, during which the still conscious Rector was heard moaning. The story of his last meal and his last moments remains one of the most tragic and disturbing in the annals of death row. From the tragic, we turn to the purely inexplicable. In 2001, Gerald Lee Mitchell, convicted of a double murder, was asked for his last meal request. He didn't want steak. He didn't want fried chicken. He asked for a single bag of assorted Jolly Ranchers hard candy. A child's treat as a final meal for a man convicted of adult crimes. There was no explanation, no grand symbolic meaning that we know of. Just a simple, bizarre request that defies easy analysis. And then, there is the story that perfectly captures the sheer absurdity of the ritual. In 1995, Thomas J. Grasso was executed in Oklahoma for a double murder. He had submitted a long and very specific list for his last meal, including 24 steamed mussels, a Burger King double cheeseburger, and 2 strawberry milkshakes. But one item was key: a can of Franco-American SpaghettiOs with meatballs. The prison kitchen did its best, but they made a mistake. They gave him a can of regular spaghetti. After his meal, Grasso's official final statement to the world was not about his crimes, his victims, or his impending death. His final words, released to the press, were, "I did not get my SpaghettiOs, I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this." It was a complaint so petty, so absurd in the face of death, that it became legendary. A dark, comedic footnote in the history of capital punishment. Tragedy, absurdity, protest, and nostalgia. The last meal is a stage for the final act of a human drama. Each of these stories is a thread in a larger tapestry of crime and punishment. We pull on these threads to see what they reveal about our society. If you want to help us unravel these complex histories, support our channel by subscribing to Dark Chronicles. What about those who refuse to play the game? For some, the final act of defiance is to reject the ritual entirely. Ted Bundy, one of America's most infamous serial killers, declined a special meal. He was given the standard prison offering for his execution day: steak, eggs, hash browns, and toast. He didn't touch it. Aileen Wuornos, the female serial killer portrayed in the film Monster, also refused a special meal. She simply had a cup of black coffee. For both Bundy and Wuornos, participating in the ritual may have felt like a form of compliance with the system that was about to kill them. Their refusal was a final, silent protest. But the most powerful refusal came from Odell Barnes, executed in Texas in 2000. Barnes maintained his innocence until the very end. When asked for his last meal request, he did not ask for food. He asked for justice, equality, world peace. The prison, of course, could not provide this. He was given the standard prison meal, which he did not eat. His last meal was not food, but a concept, a final, desperate plea for the ideals he believed he had been denied. By refusing to eat, these inmates make their most powerful statement. They reject the state's final hollow gesture of mercy. They remind us that the ritual of the last meal, however fascinating, cannot mask the grim reality of execution. We believe in examining these uncomfortable truths. If you do too, subscribe to Dark Chronicles and join our community of historical investigators. The last meal is a paradox. It is a moment of profound humanity in the most dehumanizing of circumstances. It is a ritual that forces us to confront the person behind the crime, to see the monster as a human being with tastes, memories, and desires, if only for a moment. What do these bizarre choices tell us? They tell us that even in the face of death, people cling to the things that define them: hope, belief, nostalgia, defiance, and even humor. A single olive becomes a prayer for peace. A bag of candy becomes an unsolvable riddle. A complaint about the wrong brand of spaghetti becomes a monument to human absurdity. But we must never forget the other side of this ritual. For every last meal served, there is a victim, or many victims, who were given no choices at all. Their last moments were not filled with comfort food and nostalgia, but with terror and violence. The last meal ritual, in the end, may be more for us than for the condemned. It allows us to perform an act of mercy, to feel that we have been humane before we carry out the ultimate act of judgment. It is a final taste of a life that is about to be taken. And in that single final choice, we see the full, complex, and often disturbing spectrum of what it means to be human. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows. If this investigation has given you a new perspective, please like this video, Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to Dark Chronicles for more explorations of history's darkest corners.